How's it going, guys? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting and welcome back to Steinsgate Linear Bounded Phenogram, where we are at the beginning of another story. Now, I talked about last time how I've got a mental idea of kind of how I want to progress through some of these next stories. Now that we've seen Miguri's point of view, we're going to jump back into Kurisu's point of view, and then I'm probably going to take us to Moeka and then Suzuha if we have time for both of them. We have Lukako and Mr. Braun also kind of try and go through, because I'm guessing we can't go into the next stage or the final stages without going through all of them. Whether I'm going to show them all or not is really up in the air. I'm going to decide that as I go. I don't want to show too much because I don't want to spoil everything, but I also think that showing most of everything is probably okay. Especially the most important characters. I say important, they're all important, but like, you know what I mean, the more centralized ones. So, we're going to start with Kurisu's story. I imagine this is going to be depressing as all get out, but it's okay. It's okay. Especially because I really want to understand what things were like from her perspective. So, I think we should just jump right in and get it going, shouldn't we? Oh boy. Vermilion Soterai. I don't think that's right. It's Sorteria. I don't know. Dark space.
どこなの？ここは。私、どうしてここに？あれ？そもそも私。
My head throbs slightly. I look at my left and my right, but I can't see a thing. Oh, I hate waking up in pitch black like this. Just a dark space. Pitch black. There's no sound but the ticking of a clock. Am I in a sensory deprivation tank? No, I don't remember entering one. If I had, I wouldn't be able to hear anything. Yeah, those things are crazy. A tank that blocks out all light and sound, typically used for training or experimentation. A liquid with a high level of buoyancy is utilized in the tank. Yeah, so like maybe like super salty water or something else. And it's also like the reason why you could be in it and not really know is that they specifically make it like body temperature. And like after you get over the initial like feeling of liquid, like as long as you don't move, I think you wouldn't even be able to notice that you were like floating in a water space. I've always been interested to try it. Like if I could, I would love to spend like an hour in one just to see what it would be like. And I can still hear the eerie sound of a clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I try to calm myself down and search my memories for answers. But my head is still unclear. Everything's foggy. To start with...
そもそも私は誰?
Oh, fetch. I ask myself, but I can't remember anything. The sound of the clock is so strangely unsettling. I want to ignore it, but the harder I try, the worse it gets. It's scrambling my thoughts. Just why?
また岡部の悪ふざけじゃないでしょうね。ってあいつはこの手のことはしないか。
Oh yeah, he had his limits, mostly.
あれ?
Okabe. Who is that?
そうなってもその名前は覚えてるのね。
Is that her? What the fetch? What the fetch is this?
私
Me. A female figure appears before my eyes. Even with my uncertain memories, I was convinced the figure standing before me was me.
それくらいはわかるみたいね。Makise Kurisu.
What is happening?
Makise Kurisu.
At that moment, a torrent of images rushes into my brain. 11 years ago, on my birthday, when I was upset at my dad and shattered our relationship. My mama taking me with her, she moved to America, working brutally hard to graduate college early and working as a researcher at the Victor Krondia University's Neuroscience Institute. This year, when Papa, real name Shoichi Makise, publicly known as Dr. Nakabaki, Nakabachi. I keep saying Nakabaki, but it's Nakabachi. Sent me to a letter saying he will hold a press conference to commemorate the completion of his time machine. It wasn't a time machine, it was a theory. Temporarily returning to Japan as sort of a reverse exchange student at the Japanese high school, and then...
それから、あれ、どうしたのかしら。わからないの？その後どうなったかが。私、日本に来て。
Yeah.
パパに殺され。
No.
違う。大ビルの公園で変な白衣の人に会って。違う。その白衣の人とはパパに殺される前にも会ってって。
Wait. The person in the white robe? What? Wait, who's that? My memories became convoluted. Oh, okay, maybe it's just like a muddling. Multiple intersecting memories tangled up inside my head.
ATF の公園で私にちょっかいをかけてきた岡部といろいろあって仲良くなって。
Yeah, he does that. That's right, I remember. Okabe and Taro. It all started when he began claiming I was his ghost and that I should be dead already. And then at the lecture, he disputed my theory that time machines cannot be made with the technology available to us in this timeline. Which caught my interest, so I went to visit his lab. And they really were making a time machine.
そうだった。人間が直接過去に行けるわけじゃなかったけど、過去にメールを送ることができた。
Yeah. Man, I keep forgetting how insane it would be a scientist and to see people actually doing it, especially when they're just like high school or like college freshmen.
D-mail.
D-mail. That's right. Then we repeated the D-mail experiment to verify whether we could send a message to the past and change it. Then over a course of our experiments, Okabe and I...
だいぶ思い出せたよね。なら、今は何をやっていたか思い出せる。
Like, what?
今。
What was I doing just now? Actually, that leads me back to my original questions. Just what is this place? And why am I here? Thinking rationally, the most reasonable explanation is that this is a dream and I'm currently asleep. As far as I can remember, I was staying up all night upgrading the phone wave. I was trying to make a more advanced time machine that could not only D-mail to the past, but people's memories as well. But now that I think of it, I don't remember falling asleep. If this is a daydream, it's unusual for it to have taken over my senses to this extent.
その認識は正解とも言えるし、正解ではないとも言えるわ。正解ではない？間違っているとも言えるではないの。あなたらしいわね。言葉の正確な定義にこだわろうとする。
Yeah, who are you? You're like you and me, but you're not. What is happening?
交わす言葉が正確に定義されないなら、その言葉で伝達される事象にも齟齬が生じるわ。当然でしょう。
No, not entirely. That's the same way how two people who can't speak who don't share a language can still use body language to achieve basic communication. It doesn't mean they're not communicating, but it means that the fundamentals of their intended conversation are not graspable.
え、それでいいのよ。あなたはあなたらしくあればいい。これからあなたが体験する一つの物語でも。物語？
What is she saying? Most dreams tend to be an incoherent mishmash of ideas, which makes the relatively logical through line of this conversation all the more strange. Even if my brain is producing this dialogue by association with external stimuli, there's still many odd factors.
そこまで深く気にする必要はないわよ。ただ、あるがままを受容すればいい。そしてあなたは、あなたのままでいればいい。
Weird. What is this?
その物語はここから離れたらもう覚えていることもできない蜃気楼かさもなければ幻のようなものかもしれない、もしかしたら存在さえしなかったかもしれない一つの可能性や幻想かもしれない。それでもあなたがここに来てしまった以上それを目の当たりにする権利と義務がある。
What do you mean?
8月13日2010年8月13日14時6分この物語はそこから始まり
Interesting.
同じ日の17時34分に収束する。
Are you serious? We have 3 hours? Fetch, man! My consciousness jolts in reaction to the date, the time not in my memory. But for some reason, deep inside my heart, I feel shaken. My consciousness fades. The sound of the clock won't leave my ears.
時の円環と歯車は無限の螺旋を描いてまたそこに戻る。永遠の連鎖が描く奇跡を私は知っているはず。
An infinite spiral that eventually loops back to whence it came. Interesting. It does make this definitely feels like it's making very strong allusions to Zero, Steinsgate Zero, with the idea and the concept of the ticking is actually getting in my head. It's hard to think. The Mobius strip.
だから確認しなさい。そして救うのよ。
Interesting.
ここでも
Save it all.
あなた自身を彼
Save yourself, save him.
ちょっと待って、そんな一方的に。
My consciousness rapidly clouds. The sound of the clock gets louder as if to consume my thoughts. My awareness flakes away as the bell rings. It's like I'm falling asleep, or rather waking from a dream. And then Interesting. God, that was hard to think through that. Done. Connecting the last 2 cables, I declare my success to the lab mems, and especially Okabe. I have successfully upgraded the phone wave, creating what may be the first world's time machine, capable of sending not only information through time, but humans themselves. I improved the D-mail functionality, the technology that lets us send information to the past via email, to allow us to compress a human consciousness to 36 bytes and send it to the past. Insanity! Of course, the sender and the receiver must be the same person, and we can only send their consciousness, or, to be more specific, their memories. Nonetheless, this machine represents humanity's first steps into the realm of time travel.
私たちひょっとするととんでもないものを作っちゃったかもしれない。
And monstrous. That's right, we've created a power that can transcend the laws of causality and change the world. Everyone here understood the weight of what we'd done. And so, though we were in the presence of this tremendous invention, none of us expressed even a hint of excitement. Yeah, I'd be terrified. I said this so many times before, but if someone told me like, hey, here's proof we have a working time machine, only the 6 of us know about it, and you're one of them, I would be like, alright, let's break it and pretend it never happened. Because it's like, fetch, man, it's such a dangerous thing to have power over. I've done something terrible. My chest is filled with dread. Thank you, I'm glad somebody else was super, I was super apprehensive. I followed my personal impulse to test my theory and bring my idea into being. Propelled by my lab nem's shared passion, I pressed onward with my creation. But now that it's completed, I'm completely overwhelmed. Initially, I had a feeling that I shouldn't create a time machine. The very existence of a time machine defies common sense. It holds the power to rewrite history, to change the past, present, and future. Of course, again, you also are limiting yourself. The fact that it can be changed means you need to see the three as kind of one and the same. Like, how to explain this? Alright. If you had gone to a caveman and explained that by shaping a wing and getting enough momentum you could fly, they'd think it'd be the most wholly unrealistic, unrecognizable, and life-changing abomination. Especially if you then showed them that the ultimate downsides to these types of things would be people in machines being able to drop bombs on unsuspecting individuals from air, giving them no chance to escape. Like, that sounds awful, right? But at the same time, flight also has so many good and positive things it can do. Time travel is probably very similar. We get locked into this idea of past, present, and future being a timeline, being a simple like endpoint type of thing. But if / when we achieve the ability to do time travel, you have to be able to understand that it is a dynamic thing. Okabe is lucky being the person who can maintain his intelligence and original grounding from various points in time leaping and such, but ultimately, the idea that this thing even exists means that it would be just as natural as flying in an airplane. It's terrifying, destructive, deadly, and a power to be exercised with caution, much like atomic weapons. But again, just like atomic weapons, it can actually be applied to good uses. It doesn't have to be weapons, for instance. It could be a source of energy. I mean, it's one of those things that's really odd because, you can see CERN's reasoning that, if you controlled time travel, you could effectively stop conflict. But, what's the cost of that? Humanity's humanity. Is that worth it? Kind of. I don't know. You have to admit, their dystopian future isn't much worse than the friggin' World War III one. But, again, it's a bundle of mess to deal with. But you can't think of things too... I think I was a little too rigid in my interpretation of time travel back when I first played Steinsgate originally. I do still think it's an abhorrent machine and should be very much destroyed, but I don't think it's that right. The fact that it could exist means that it needs to be accepted as part of the natural order, like airplanes and atomic bombs. Our world is governed by the rules of cause and effect, but the time machine completely breaks this rule. Well, no, it just tweaks it. In the event of a failure, one can travel back in time to remove the cause of said failure, thus ensuring it never happens. A disruption would be the same. Travel to the past, divert, eliminate the interruption, and you can complete what you're working on undistracted. This is akin to holding the power of God in your hands, militarily and politically at least. Scientifically, its value is immeasurable. Which is precisely why this technology must not be allowed to exist. The power of the time machine would be too much for humanity to handle in a more civilized future, let alone now. She's got a point. Just like atomic weapons. I really wish they didn't exist, but they do. The rockets and nuclear weapons of the 20th century were the same way. Bam. The small number of people who controlled these technologies created an imbalance of power on the world stage. Even in the 21st century, the scars of that imbalance still remain, scars that restrict scientists such as myself to this day. But now, I've created a time machine. For no reason other than I wanted to see if I could. I understood how dangerous it could be, and even feared it, rejected the very idea that it could exist, but even then, I was driven by my curiosity about the unknown and my desire, as a researcher, to push the bounds of possibility. The same motivators led me here, to the Future Gadget Laboratory in the first place. When I saw the experience Okabe and the others were conducting, and I saw them send mail to the past with the phone wave, curiosity consumed me. And then results. And the result was this upgraded phone wave. Yeah. Yoshida. Even Mayuri understands. Mayuri. And even the leader of the Future Gadget Laboratory, the self-proclaimed notorious mad scientist Yoon and Kyoma Okabe, none of them could bring themselves to speak. I looked from face to face, seeing uncertainty in each one. But eventually, unsurprisingly, the first to speak was Okabe.
正式名称を決めようではないか。
All things considered, the way he directs everyone else around him is very leader-like. That said, given his first reaction is for us to come up with a name, tells me he's not taking this seriously enough. I don't know, you could call it the Doom Box. That would be an appropriate name. Eventually we decided that the upgraded phone wave should be given the name Time Leap Machine, though that was also subject to change. Okabe came up with a far more Chunibyo name during the process, but ultimately Mayuri chose the simple name that I proposed. Then, as Okabe's urging, I proceed to explain how the Time Leap Machine functions.
一言で言うと、これは記憶をデータ化してリング特異点を通過させ過去へ飛ばす装置。
Okay, first off, okay. Let's see, backspace. Alright, so. The hippocampus scans memory and encoded impulse electrical signals. That is very ridiculous to in its initial thing. Scanning the brain is a very delicate process, and so it is quite a stretch for her to be able to just do it. And like how she mentioned out to 3.24 terabytes of information. Back in 2010, that would be quite a lot of information to try and upload quickly to CERN. You have the time leap machine, you upload it 40 to 50 seconds. That is an insane amount of speed. Generates a black hole with the LHC. Use a black hole to compress 3.24 terabytes into 36 bytes. Which their argument is that a compression via black hole is a data stream compression. But the thing is, they've never explained, and one of the biggest problems I've thought about since I did the original Steinsgate game is the uncompression. I mean, you have zip files. Effectively, when you use a zip drive, and unzip a file, you are uncompressing a file. The file that's compressed is not usable in its current state. It has to be uncoiled, and yet there's no system in place to uncoil it properly. Unless she's included in that terabyte packet a way for older phones to be able to open and unpack that data and then upload it. All of this happening effectively in the course of a few seconds, which I think is highly not possible. I mean, okay, if it's all traveling at the speed of light, it's possible, but a device, like a phone, being able to unzip terabytes of data and broadcast them within seconds, back in 2010 or even earlier, it honestly is pretty ridiculous. It's a fun idea, but I've thought about it over time. There's a lot of gaps in this that don't make sense. But yeah, so you have the retrieval that goes to the time leap machine, and it time leaks basically like with email. Received onto the phone, memory data is overwritten, broadcasted via the microwaves into your brain, and altering the entire makeup and positioning of all your brain cells. That, again, does not make any sense. That there is a lot to this theory that does make sense, the very fundamentals of the idea. If you could interpret and the memory data of a brain in a certain state, and then you could re-upload and manipulate the brain cells to reflect that, then you effectively could upload memories from the past, like a save state of a person. I do think that that's technologically possible. If you have the means to do it, it's possible, I think. But there's a lot of pseudoscience in here, unfortunately. It's a great story, and I definitely enjoy it, and I'm really happy that it exists. But while I spent more time talking about it, the biggest problems I see is upload and download times. There's 3 stages: the scanning to the time leap machine to CERN, and then from the from the time leap to the phone. These are steps, and the phone to the person, so technically 4. All 4 of those steps. I mean, my computer takes 20 minutes. I have a decent internet, and it takes 20 minutes for me to download 30 gigabytes. How is a cell phone back in 2010 uploading and capable of storing, interpreting, and unpacking 3.24 terabytes of information, let alone the capability to unzip the file that was gone from 3 terabytes to 36 bits? I understand that the black hole, I can kind of see how by compressing the data, like a light beam, you can compress light, and effectively this is just information, and if you're using a signal, electrical signals transmitted through into a medium of light, it totally makes sense. But uncompressing it would be a massive process. But she's saying the time loop machine can like do that somehow. And that's the biggest problem I have. So anyway, sorry for the long rant. I know, well, I guess I shouldn't apologize. You guys tend to like this, but that's the thing. Is like the unzipping is one of the biggest hurdles here that there's no accounting for in the story. But again, it's a fantastic, fantastic story, and you don't need these explanations because it's not real. It's pseudoscience. But like, it is a problem. Anyway, the receiver will then acquire the memories of their future self. The time loop machine's biggest innovation, as stated previously, is the ability to send the user's memories into the past. To transcend time, something must pass through a ring singularity. Simply put, the area near a black hole, if anything physical attempted this, it would be crushed by the black hole's supergravity. Suffice it to say, physical objects won't be traveling through time anytime soon. However, we were able to circumvent this issue by converting the user's memory into data and sending the data through the ring singularity. This area is not to scale. No freaking kidding. And that was only made possible by the existence of SERN's LHC. So again, this is taking the idea that like they lied and they actually can make micro black holes in their collider. Area is absolutely not to scale. Magnetic. So this is what this is effectively is using magnetic wave entrapment in order to compress matter. Like, you know, when you have magnets that like repel each other, you can get things that can like be hovered between two magnetic fields that are repulsing each other if you have an object that can be receptive to those impulses. And then the idea is if you up that to the nth degree, you can effectively compress matter artificially as if it was experiencing supergravity by giving it supermagnetism, like the effects of supermagnetism. And then the parallel here is that in order to create a space where stuff doesn't just get obliterated by the black hole and absorbed forever, you create two black holes that are orbiting each other in a binary type system, because then theoretically, while the gravity would be insane, the black holes would prevent each other from like grasping the packet of information as it passes between them. You know, the idea being that like while they both have the capability of pulling in the information almost instantaneously and like never letting it go, the two of them at odds, as long as they are like perfectly in balance, would allow you to zip through it, which is definitely feasible. It'd be insane, like she said, nothing physical could survive that. Even matter couldn't, but theoretically photons could, and if photons can do it, then you've got information, because most information, especially, think about fiber wire, is information transmitted as light through cables at the speed of light. Like, that's why it's so impressive. Hashida's hacking gave us the ability to manipulate the LHC, which is able to create many black holes. In turn, this allowed us to utilize the infinite compression of the supergravity created by black holes and adequate compression to adequately compress the memory data. Yeah, like, compression on that scale could be infinite. Like, it would be possible, like I said, I think, to compress terabytes of data into bytes, because you're just packing the photons in super tightly. But how do you unzip that information? Like, because the idea is that once it's compressed, it can then be sent back to the time loop machine and then sent through the time loop machine, which means that the data and light doesn't uncompress itself naturally, which kind of would be my first thought, honestly, at least partially uncompressing. But then once it goes through the time loop, how does it uncompress on the other side? With this extraordinary power, we were able to complete the time loop machine. I finished talking about the time loop machine's functions and dangers, then take a breath. Seems like Miuri has zoned out during the complexity of the topic, but Okabe and Hashida seem to have understood sufficiently. Then, my lengthy explanation complete, silence descends upon the laboratory once again. Yeah. Okabe, Hashida, and I study each other's facial expressions. So who's grabbing the bat? It's clear that we're all trying to delay an important decision. How to make use of our time machine's godlike power. Once again, Okabe finally breaks the long silence. He clears his throat, takes a breath, and speaks.
どうする?
どうするって?
タイムリープマシンの扱いについてだ。
Get a bat! Just get a bat. Okabe surveys the room as he speaks. His gaze settles on me. He probably wants me to state my opinion. Sitting in silence in the middle of a debate, as you might expect, is a fox poss. It is researchers' duty to offer and discuss their opinion, whatever it may be. But I had my reasons for not speaking up. I was conflicted. Obviously, this isn't something we can freely use. As I said earlier, to monopolize and abuse an ability so godlike would produce the same sort of problems that nukes do. However, it would be a lie to say that I didn't want to experiment. I wanted nothing more than to test my creation out and see if it worked. I mean, come on, could you resist? That's the dangerous thing. It'd be like, I would be like, alright, let's break it. But just let me see. I just need to know, real quick. I won't do anything crazy. Let's send me back 10 minutes and I'll let you know. And then we can break it before it's... Oh, wait, no, that could be a paradox. Okay, we break it after we come back up to the time where I've sent myself back to the past. Well, actually, it doesn't really matter because there's no paradoxes in this situation because time is not linear. And the world line would have adjusted. Okay, no, we're fine. We'll just break it when I go back there. This is absolutely my ego speaking, my self-righteous and considerate desires as a scientist. This is like the Werner von Braun who, in pursuit of his desire to go to the moon, developed rockets for the military. Yeah, then they were all used for military purposes. Werner Magnus Maximilian Friedrich von Braun. That's a mouthful, and I'm sure I said it wrong. I apologize to all my German friends. One of the fathers of space travel. In order to develop rockets that could go to the moon, he made several deals with the military and the government. He was a man willing to sell his soul to the devil if it meant traveling to space. To be fair, I kind of get it. One of my all-time dreams is to go to the moon. Or just even to space, honestly. I'll take going to space, even temporarily. But it would be so cool to go to the moon. Only to see his V-2 rockets turn London into a sea of flames. Yeah. A German-developed liquid propellant rocket used during World War II. Its supersonic flight speeds made it difficult to intercept. It's the grandfather of all current space rocketry and missile technology. Yeah, the Germans really had a lot of cutting-edge stuff. We're lucky we beat them through the Manhattan Project, honestly. Can you imagine if Hitler had gotten nukes first? My internal sense of what was right and my desires or researchers were in conflict with one another. Which is why, when Okabe's gaze falls upon me, I felt there was nothing I could say. Why is this man only serious in times like this? I grit my teeth and inaudibly curse under my breath. This man, Okabe Rintaro, is a surprisingly serious person. Even if his Chunibyo comes out in full force when he's worried or backed into a corner. When I talk about my problems with my father or the other lab members are having a hard time, he treats us all with care and respect. Because he's a good dude. And I can tell from the look on my face that he's absolutely serious right now. The one staring at me isn't Yonen Kyoma, but Okabe Rintaro.
私たちの手に負える代物じゃないのは確かよ。一番無難なのは研究機関に譲渡して国家プロジェクト扱いにしてもらうことね。
And we see how bad an idea that is in Zero. I still think just break it, pretend it never existed. I mutter my response, knowing full well I hadn't quite convinced myself. I want to experiment. However, there's no way we could handle something like the time machine, and given the risk involved, I just don't want to use it on a whim.
実感が湧かないな。
Yeah, that's the crazy thing.
マユシーも湧かないよ。
いや、マユシは何も手伝ってないからっしょ。
あ、そうだったね。
But she was an integral part of the team. Dang it. It didn't seem like she'd immediately understood the enormity of the situation at first, but from the way they're acting, I can tell they aren't completely blind to it. Which means that the most important opinion is Okabe's.
岡部の意見はちなみに法王院じゃなくて岡部の意見ね。
I emphasize this last point, given that Okabe often retreats into the Junibyo act when he's stressed. There's a possibility he would have answered me as Yonen Kyoma. Still, I think the chances of that would be fairly slim, even if I hadn't nipped it in the bud. As I mentioned earlier, Okabe is fairly serious deep down. In a sense, the reason I emphasized my desire to hear Okabe's opinion was to show my faith in him. As long as it's Okabe Rintaro who speaks and not Yonen Kyoma, I will abide by his decision. That was my intent. Even if he decided to perform an experiment, I'd be willing to test our subject, to be our test subject.
実験してみたい気持ちはある。
Bam. Okabe said after a moment of silence. I swallowed my last breath. If that's what you've decided. My resolve strengthened, those words were on the tip of my tongue. But before I could speak them into being, Okabe continued his thought and put an abrupt stop to my momentum.
だが実際にタイムリープを行うには問題が多すぎる。
His assertions were correct. The time leap machine alone has its share of problems. And that's before we get to the time paradoxes. For one thing, we can't conduct an experiment with an animal or stand-in. We need a human test subject. I thought of experimenting on myself, but I have to admit I was afraid. I'd be terrified too if this thing is even possibly kind of wrong. It could kill you. Although I was prepared to offer myself up as a test subject in my experiment, Okabe's words put a stop to that. He asks the other lab members if they were willing to volunteer. Unfortunately, by halting my momentum, Okabe may have put a stop to our experimentation. There was no way Hashida and Mayuri would volunteer. And I think Okabe might have known that. The fact that he spoke at that exact moment may have been a calculated move to kill my momentum. He usually acts like he's incapable of such calculations, but I understand that his intelligence skyrockets in critical situations like this. Or rather, I've come to understand that. She's got a good point, but I also don't think he does it consciously. I think he definitely did intercede like the way he did. If I remember correctly, I think he even thinks about that. But I don't think he consciously thinks of it like as a plan, like, oh, I'm going to outmaneuver everybody. It's more of just like, wait, I've got to make sure we don't mess this up. After some half-hearted exchanges, the conversation once again came to a stalemate. Mayuri, who's been silently watching this whole time, finally spoke up.
マユシーはね、難しいことはよくわかんないけど、例えばね、マユシーの買ってきたバナナをタイムリープさせるのはどうかな?
While untenable, I could tell that Mayuri had put some thought into the idea. Her carefree attitude helped soothe my frayed nerves.
マユリったらバナナには人間みたいに脳はないでしょ?
That's right. As I mentioned earlier, the time leap machine needs a human test subject. That was the source of all my fears. And one of the major hurdles to overcome for this machine.
あ、そっか。それじゃあダメだね。
I mean, maybe you could do like a ape or a chimp, you know? But again, like, we're not entirely sure if we'd be able to know if it actually worked, because they wouldn't be able to express it. Mayuri didn't even try to defend her idea after my explanation. She may have been aware that her theory was misguided in the first place. So does that mean she thought it necessary to speak up to ease the tension in the air? Maybe she didn't think it so much as feel it. I fully understand the 2 weeks that we spent together that she's no fool. Knowing that, perhaps my suppositions aren't too off base. And her gambit seems to work. The tension filling the lab is now transferred to something different.
実験はしないでおく。
Yes. Okabe said, as if guided by the change in atmosphere.
タイムリープマシンはしかるべき研究機関に託そう。そして世間に公表する。
Yeah, neither Hashida or I have any objection to this, so as long as we entrust that decision to him, it was the sure outcome. A little while later, I was finally able to calm myself down. Humanity's first time traveler. The temptation to use the time leap machine to claim that title was nearly overwhelming, to be honest. It would both prove my proposed theory and symbolize humanity's first step into a previously unknown dimension. I imagine the first people on the moon felt much the same way. But at the same time, there's still fear inside me. Both the fear of the unknown and, worse yet, the fear passed down by my father. My father, Shoichi Makise, the time machine researcher. But because time travel theory is not yet sufficiently tested, the field is publicly regarded as little more than crazy pseudoscience. My father, Papa, lost everything when people labeled him a junk scientist. He was so attached to the idea of a time machine that he lost his job as a researcher, separated from me and my mama, and was even abandoned by his best friend who was funding his research. But research often pushes into the realm outside of common knowledge. Now commonly accepted Big Bang Theory and the theory that black holes are collapsed stars that both laughed at the time of their publication. It's true. The theory the universe came into existence through a huge explosion. The name itself came from Fred Hoyle, who at the time favored a different cosmological model. On his radio program, he said these theories were based on the hypothesis that all matter in the universe was created in one big bang. While at the time this would be believed to be a pejorative, Hoyle would go on to say that he had meant to create a striking image so as to better highlight the difference between the two theories. Said theory was said to be heretical at the time. The trouble is, we started finding evidence of it, like the massive background radiation. Theories that we can now consider essential to our understanding of the universe were thought to be junk science. That is why, as a scientist, it's inappropriate to reject things without a second thought. Even if they are seen as crazy, all things deserve proper verification and confirmation. Bam! That's the thing. Coupling these two ideas together. The first thing is that you should never dismiss something just because it sounds crazy, but you also need to understand that, it's incredible claims require incredible proof. Like, just because an idea sounds interesting doesn't mean you should give it any food, especially if it's something that aligns with your personal beliefs. The instant you need to train yourself to recognize, as soon as you read an article or see a headline that is coinciding with what you perceive to be the truth, you have to check yourself at the door and be like, hang on a second. Am I just accepting this offhand because it's what I want to hear? Because you really need to see sources. Now, basic human decency sourcing is simply checking to see if an article actually has sources, and if the sources are from like a reputable place, such as a research institute. Are they timely, like as in like not older than 5 years, and definitely not older than 10 years unless the subject matter has not had any growth in the past 10 years. I mean, like, irrigation techniques are probably well tried and true until we find something better, but like, if you're talking about science, like, it really, 10 years is pretty out of date. And then most importantly, is it multiple sources, or like, can you find anything readily available that contradicts the sources that you read? A lot of people will find like, kind of like 1 or 2 articles that will support their idea, and ignore thousands that reject their idea. Climate change, global warming, and human influence on such climate change and global warming is fraught with this problem. I would also say people who are anti-vaxxers. Like, there's so much evidence that points to the fact that vaccines are real, helpful, and aren't dangerous. Or at least the danger is so minimal compared to the gains that society gets from them that it's laughable to say that they're garbage. And yet people genuinely believe the 1 or 2 articles they find that support their theory. It's like, you have to be so careful. And then proper vetting, proper research and debunking involves heavily investigating every source that's used. As a matter of fact, doing one of the aspects of research that people don't ever think about is the fact that people who research have to go through extensive work, probably as much work as the actual experiment, if not more, to try and cross-check and make sure the data is sound. That's why it's so important to have confirmation by exterior and like autonomous and neutral parties to confirm your findings before you publish them as real. So a lot of times we hear about these treatments that are like, oh, we found a new treatment for cancer, I found a new treatment for lately it's been this like the disease that's been going around. You hear about these people saying like, oh, we have this working treatment, or we have a vaccine that's coming out. It's like, no, these things have to be taken in due process, and the reason we do it is for safety and proper use of funds and information and experience. Worse than not having a vaccine is having a bad vaccine, because you then are wasting so much time and money and energy and effectively doing nothing. So proper verification and confirmation is incredibly important. It's critical to the backbone of just developing information in general, and even the basic skills like checking yourself at the door, and when you see an article that you agree or disagree with, check its sources, like at least see if they seem somewhat reasonable before you share it. Otherwise you're just spreading misinformation, and that can be dangerous. It's so important to be careful, and it's a trap I fall for all the time. I always find myself realizing that I wasn't checking myself properly, and I fall into this time and again, and I hate it because I should know better. We all should know better, and a lot of dangerous things are brought to pass because people do not understand the importance of proper scientific verification and confirmation. It's so sad because it's like drinking poison, and the only reason why we're drinking it is because the person in the room who knows it's poison doesn't talk about it properly, and the person who's drinking the cup that's just thrown into their hand isn't checking to see why, if it smells weird or if it came from an untrustworthy person. Like these are things that you think would be basic. Like if I have a cup of water and I smell it and it smells funky, I should not drink it. But if I never check, if I never take the moment to casually be aware of just the basic fundamentals of drinking a liquid, I could easily end up dead. And it's so sad because we all fall for this trap and it ruins so much stuff. While I told myself this, I still found it hard to accept. In my mind, ideas that are too bizarre, too crazy, or too new are best avoided. To be blunt, the Big Bang and black hole theories were the exception to the rule. Most of the junk theories we see in the world end up just being that, junk. The time machine theory is certainly among their ranks. There's very little evidence to back up the time travel claims and mountains of reasons to reject them. In essence, it's the junkiest of all junk. So, as a scientist, simply the fact that we've made a time machine is incredibly stressful. Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't want to end up like Papa. That fear strikes me directly in the heart. But that's not my only fear related to him. If my Papa, who sacrificed everything in his life to research time machines, if he found out that someone else had successfully created a time machine, I'm afraid of how he'd feel. It's true that Papa and I were estranged because I rejected his time machine theory when I was younger. But at the same time, that theory motivated me. If the time leap machine actually works, regardless of whether or not his specific theory is correct, nobody could call him a junk scientist for studying time travel anymore. He might even be able to receive funding from a major company again. It's hard to stand still thinking of that. I could fulfill several personal goals by testing the time leap machine. Stating my curiosity about the unknown, fulfilling my desires as a scientist, enabling my Papa to be accepted by the scientific community, enabling him to accept me. But at the end of the day, all of them only serve to feed my ego. That's no reason for us to wield the powers of a god. Okabe's decision to call off the first experiment helped me realize this. I breathed a sigh of relief from the bottom of my heart. It took some time for me to accept it, but I can't help but think how extraordinary Okabe is. He helped me realize something I'd nearly lost sight of. He may be annoying, crazy Chunibyo, but still, he's a good man. I suddenly look at the clock. 4:54 p.m.
あら、もうこんな時間か。寝不足だと時間感覚狂うわね。
Yeah. Alright, I think this is a good place for us to stop. There's a lot of ranting in this episode. We definitely didn't get very far, but I think it's a good place because we know things are going to kick off here real quick. So I don't want to jump too far into it before that happens, but I think we had a lot of good talk. And it's nice. I haven't been able to really dive into the science side of things for a while because once you get clear of the hurdles of like getting the time loop machine going, it all just becomes kind of part of a narrative. Like we accept the existence of the time loop machine and we just go for it. So today I got to pull out like my scientific side of thinking, which I think is really good. I think it's one of the things that makes my series really fun to watch, in my opinion. And a lot of you seem to agree. The fact that I have a general understanding of the basic physics side of everything, the fact that I find this subject matter so fascinating and captivating, the fact that I've read a lot about this type of thing and I like to think about logical like fallacies, conclusions, and all that stuff. Science is something I love with passion. So I'm happy that I got to be able to talk about it again. And while it does make it for a bit of a draining first episode, we'll be jumping into the action next week, so no worries there. I'm excited to be able to contemplate this, and I'm glad that Kurisu brings out this side of me a lot. Man, she'd be fun to have as a friend. She'd be fun to have just in general around. I don't care how. I wish I knew more people like her in real life. But that's the way of things. Maybe as I go back to school, I'll be able to kind of become acquainted and make friends that are a lot more along the lines of the research side of things. But again, because I'm not going into full research anymore, because I'm deviating and focusing on education, I'm not going to really truly be able to sink my teeth into the world of the cutting edge and the theoretical, which is really sad. I'd love to be able to do that. Maybe someday I can go back to school, but at the same time, if you really want to be able to change the world through research, most often it has to be a lifelong commitment, and I'm going to commit to some other things instead. It's sad to give up on that kind of prospect, but at the same time, I know that by doing something I'm passionate about, which is helping other people be excited about science, being able to be focused on my family life and not just focused entirely on my career. These are things that I know I'll be able to find happiness doing. I don't know necessarily if I'd find happiness research. I mean, it could be very, very much like Kurisu's father. If you feel like your entire life is just beset with like misfirings, loss of like financial gains, and ability to even like, you know, have the money to perform your research, it can feel like a waste. I'd love to think I had the capability of changing the world in that regard, but I'm going to have to limit myself and accept the fact that I can be just as happy and still change the world, just in different ways. Who knows? Maybe I'll be able to help guide the next Einstein or Neil deGrasse Tyson to become something of a player on the grand scale of things. And I could be quite happy to do that. But that's all for me to contemplate. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel. As always, it's a pleasure having you here. It's a pleasure being able to share my very nerdy side with you. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what I've said and maybe some of the issues I had about stuff. And also, please make sure, check your sources. Teach others to check their sources and make sure that you're not sharing misinformation if you can avoid it. And until the next video you're watching from me, or happen to see me in next, I'll see you there.